is actually a small Japanese because the texture. Japanese. It's a little tiny 1-gallon one. So if you had a good sized pot, you could put, but it's not really big enough to make an impact.
Is this 1,000?
Yeah, let's use this to not as red. But once again, you're looking at the texture, and you say, well, tropical, are Japanese maples tropical? They are. And one of the reasons they're tropical is in plant science and ID. You think about Mediterranean gardens, they were formed in these big estates by the patrons of the explorers. And one of the things that the explorers did when they went out searching for new lands is they brought back samples of botany, plant material. And these patrons would have them planted up in their gardens. So you can go into an Italian garden, a French garden, a Spanish garden, and you will see Japanese maples, palm trees, you see all these exotic plants that don't belong there. And yet they are gorgeous in these combinations and how they put it together. And it's because they brought it back from all over the world and put them into a Mediterranean garden. So don't be afraid to, as long as it takes the same requirements of water and sun, don't be afraid to mix things that technically don't go together. So that, if this was red, and then you'd want to put something in, what would you put in, like a hanging, a medium texture, like another lamium? I don't know. That would be, yeah, that would be pretty. I wish this was redder right now, so you can see that those three colors get real intense. And even these are beautiful when they're bare. I don't know. This is a new plant, so I don't know if it's sterile aphids or if it will actually produce flowers. I'll have to look it up.
It's kind of a shade.
It is a shade. It's afternoon shade, morning sun.
Chris, when you're potting, so you have to be careful, like if there's mold, it's going to be in the shade, you're going to mold the shade. Yeah. And what about watering? You know, some things need more water, but some things...
Well, that's why it's important. And one of the things, I'm sorry, I don't mean, when it says more, when things say more watering, like a hydrangea, yes, I wouldn't put a hydrangea in. A lot of other things you don't. But most of the time, plants get more water than they need. And if you start watering on a consistent basis and then keep getting them established and then start backing off, they'll all do fine again. The best tools.
Need more water? Hydrangeas
Oh yeah, because the leaf is so big. That's what's called macrophylla, the large leaf, and if it doesn't get enough, and it gets hot, it just wilts and stuff. So it's really not a good intermixing with it, putting with other ones. One of the best tools for container garden is a water meter, just a little probe that you can just stick down in the soil instead of having to break your finger, and if it's dry down to here, you need it's water. Any other questions?
I like to have all containers on the drip system.
We do.
I don't have to worry about watering it. But once again, we're so hot this summer that a daily watering is usually not overdoing it.
No, in the summertime, daily.
But you back off. As the temperatures cool down at night, you back off on the watering.
We do installations. We try and put the container gardens, the popper, and on a drip system. And one of the things that's nice to do is when you have if you're planning on putting if you're planning on building and putting a patio in, and you know you want to have containers on the patio, one of the little tricks that we do is when the cement contractor is pouring the cement and we know we're replacing the pots in the design, we create a hollow bowl in that spot where the pot's going to sit, and then coming through the base of that we put in a sleeve or a chase, and we come up through that with our drip system, and we sometimes come up with their lighting for wiring. So you take a big urn like this one on the corner, and you have it in the corner of an area where you're walking by it, and it might be 3 feet off the walkway, but you put a light white downward, like the little petite cigars that look like little mushrooms. You put it up and it shines down the face of that pot and comes out and lights the sidewalks. And if it's a maple in a big pot, we'll underlight it, put the light up in the maple and then shadow it on the lawn. Right? It's gorgeous. But even if you're just putting a pot on your existing cement, if you put those rings in like we talked about, we put our drip system right through the bottom. And you come up and then you put it up at the top. You don't see that drip line coming around the side. So that's a nice way of doing it, sealing it. The texture. That's a fern, isn't it? I love this one.
Yeah, ferns are great for shade.
Yeah, and there's so many ferns. This is a fern, believe it or not. A different looking. There's another one there. And these are so pretty when they're full. Like this is another fern. These can actually be focal plants because they're so lovely texture. And the autumn fern, the traditional old autumn fern is now a brilliant autumn fern. So yeah, and it doesn't have a lot yet because it's showing. Yeah, it's just showing. These become brilliant orange. Or in the new growth even now when it comes out, but especially when it's cooler. It was brilliant coppery orange bronze and like green. I'm turning this back to Karen because I'm sabotaging her. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're doing a fabulous job. That, and you pulled this off.
This is I'm actually using the containers I'm putting together. Yeah, it's a nice yellow color.
It's a dwarf gardenia, so it's going to bloom, but stay under 12 inches tall.
It's very good. Does that one stay that low?
Right?
Yeah, it's good. I thought one of their 12 inches.
It's a variegated radicus gardenia.
They have the little tiny flowers and they look real good fragrance too. I love putting pots with fragrance in them by the doors or windows. So wintertime, if it's a nice day and you have a winter blooming flower plant, you can enjoy it by opening up the doors and windows, get some fresh air in the fall and it's a nice fragrance. One of my favorite, and it does so well in pots, is the flowery daphne. I brought one over, in fact. No, I have it on the cart. I'll go get it. I call it the harbinger of spring. It's a waxy green leaf, plain green or a white edge to it. There's some other new varieties too that are smaller, but those are my favorite. And it has a little tiny, it almost looks like a miniature hydrangea, pink flower. It is the most intensely beautiful fragrance, but they're very fussy if they're in the ground. They're better off either on a mound where the water drains away or in a container where it drains away and they don't end up one times getting overwatered for their sugar. And when I was in high school down in Wall Creek, I had lunch and then I had English, and outside our door was a whole hedge of daphne. And I'd come back on a warm spring day or a warm winter day, because they usually bloom end of January, early February, depending on the winter climate. And they would be in bloom, and it was a boring class, and I'd be sound asleep smelling this. So and I apologize. They're shiny, but they've been overhead watered in here, and so we get our hard water buildup, but the rain takes it away. But they're actually forming up buds right now. But it's a beautiful plant, and the fragrance is utterly incredible. That's why people are called daphne.
Are they go pee-pee?
Probably 4 feet is about the biggest. A funny little side note story. I had a client who lived in Arbuck, older gentleman, and he passed away. And then I went to a client's house in Marysville, and I had been to the old home, and I had been to this house several times with other clients, and this time I went to meet her, and she had just bought it. Went into a new spot. I'd never been in the backyard, and I looked across the yard, and there were these big deodora cedar trees, and as I'm looking at them, the face of this man, my client, who passed passed away. It just flashed in my line of vision. And I kind of went like, and my client said, "Are you okay?" He said the weirdest thing. Well, it turned out that was the house he was born in. And to make it even, it's still giving me goosebumps. She said, "Do you see that spot over there in the big hole in the planter bed against the house?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "The day he died, that was a daphne his mother had planted on the day he was born, had planted the day he was born, and died. The plant died the same day." So I firmly believe there's a connection. I've had some fun things happen. That was one of my elementary. Well, you have to have five.
How do you judge
When you're first planting it, or when it is going to fill in?
well, obviously, you may have the whole figure out what
The root growth, if you're looking at a plant that gets up like 3 feet tall, your root growth isn't going to be much deeper than that. So you really, that's what I was saying, if you put a pot that is like 2 feet or 3 feet, you could, like a pot like this could take a small Japanese maple. Because the roots are not, and what will happen is, we've had this happen twice, eventually the roots will just fill the whole pot, and then you take a pruning saw and you go around the outer edge about 2 to 3 inches all the way around and cut out all that root ball. And then you just fill it in with your soil. And because we have a client that has huge urns by their pool, and these big specimen topiaries, so about every 3 years we go in and drill sort of the guys with saw all the way around, take it out, fill it in, and they'd be good to go for the next 3 years. Wear gloves and a lot of. Now I know that when we've had them transplanted, Mary Helen and Fred would take newspaper and roll it, and towels and wrap it around them, and then they would pull them out. That's what I did. Okay, you're gonna do sun. This is not
Got ants all over. Ants on
I love this guy.
so.
That guy's Susan. Rebecca. Here he's so tall I use him as the driller. But I love pairing him up with grasses too. Shorter plants to go, not just for your thriller. The grasses are often used to their plumes, swinging.
The grasses don't need a lot of water. Because I think I've had them before and I've had grasses.
That's usually what happens. Kill them with kindness.
Well, but also you need to know they do go dormant for the winter. So
Right,
sometimes
but
people think sometimes.
I think I have them in spots with the sprinklers.
Probably.
So if you are using grasses, they need to be cut back after the danger of frost. They can die if it gets too cold, so protecting the root ball is helpful, but they can survive many years. So it's going to go dormant for the winter. At that point you can either change it out of your pot or forget about the pot until spring rolls around and you'll come back and do it all over again. So grass is a lovely way, and you can mix that up with like the picture that I showed you. They actually had a grass at the top of it, and then they used the cabbage, which you can use during the winter months it's sold, because it's going. If it gets too warm, it's going to bolt faster. So that's why we can use it in the winter, and you can use it as a filler all around, and they can get quite large.
So this would be dormant too. And you wouldn't have that in the winter, but you'd have this pulling out the color. And if that goes dormant, then what do you work
Yeah,
with?
this is just a fall, pretty much a fall.
Yeah.
Fall colors, and you can add the mums in here.
Oh, pretty. Pretty, pretty. Yeah.
And then find fillers. And sometimes I wonder if they go to Michael's craft store and get some nice little to throw in there with it, and nobody would know.
I've never used plastic plants.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think it's anyway.
That's better.
Yeah. So here's a way to get a real wow factor out of your pot.
We'll talk about this too.
Silver Falls dichondra. Is everybody familiar with this?
No. It's pretty.
We have it in our front flower bed out there. It will do full sun, part sun. I have heard that people put it in shade, but I've never done it. Other dichondras put it in total shade, but so this one at least part sun. I know full sun will work fine with it, and it's gorgeous as a silk. Adds a touch of color. Purple goes great with purple, by the way.
I'm just gonna pull that one to use. Because you can use, I love monochromatic gardens too. So if you use this electric cordyline, and then this is a dwarf butterfly bush. And then you put in this, and you brought in oh, it's right here, Angelonia. And then have this hanging down over it. And then a pretty pot. And you've got all these different textures. You'd have butterflies coming in with this one, as well as the Angelonia. That's a butterfly attractant. I don't think that attracts anything except your eyes. So I think that's a sun plant.
This Angelonia happens to be a really hot seller here. I sell it a lot for fillers or a filler, but usually filler because it comes in so many different colors, white, purple, and they really hold up to the sun very well. But they are cold sensitive, so it may get beat up during the winter, but it should come back and look better when at least back out in spring. So.
There are these new lantanas out called Little Lucky. This is bandana. It's kind of in the same line. And, you know, we're mostly seeing lantanas. They're just massive. I do too. But these are only 12 to 18 inches tall. And they truly are. And the butterflies love them. Hummingbirds love... No, I haven't seen them remember this one. Hummingbirds love this one. And they like that one too. I think...
Yeah, but for sure the sages.
Yeah.
I combine sages
Really?
with lantanas.
We have this one in a really hot red and bright pink combination. It's gorgeous. It would be pretty with that one. Oh, that's shade though. So that was.
Make it dark.
Well, here, this one would be pretty with it. That's the little lucky orange. That's bright, hot. Put purple with that. So, yeah. This is
Lots of colors to choose from.
if you want hot, bright colors. There you go. That's that pot. There you go. You've got the orange. That's more of the color, and you've got the blue, and you've got the red. And if you wanted a lime green trailing, this. Oh, Angelonia. I wouldn't put that in that pot though.
No, sorry. Hold on.
But we might have this in a. Where the heck is it rich? But here's an example. You talk about having a lime green to match that green. You'd have to put that though on the side of the pot that it gets for the shade in the afternoon.
It's no shade. You know the rock sitting area. It's right on the corner between that and the.
But this would shade it. So if you put,
No shade.
but these will create shade on the back side. So if you have them here in front of them, and this gets big, and this gets full, and this comes down the front side, then if you had this, it would come down the back side, or it would either on the east or north side of that where that pops. So that would be, then what I would do is I would put that over here, bring this here, and then this one gets the full sun. And you can pull it off. One other thing I think we're going to show you is if you have a tall pot and you don't want to put a tree in there and you just want to do, but it needs height, these are fabulous. So you put this down. You put it down inside a big urn, center it in there, and then you can plant. You do two things actually. We have what they call the flora clock vines. grow fast. You plant them in the middle, and then you wind them up around the trellis. It would have been easier if I and then you take it off and it winds up and it cascades down all summer with flowers. But it would die off in the winter and come back every summertime. So if you wanted to mix it with something that was permanent, you could use like an ivy.
The little English
The only caution I have on this one is this will sometimes burn if it gets too hot. But you can wrap it around it, and what happens is this one takes off when it gets hot, and then it puts shade on this. So you make it sunburning where it isn't protected, but this will protect it through the summer. And then you have a permanent green spring in this pot, and then you can use that as your thriller and have fillers and spillers all the way around the base of it. So I think half the fun of gardening is the creativity of what you can come up with. And I love seeing and hearing, I love Pinterest, I'm crazy it has all this time. But I think what it shows people can create is wonderful.
I didn't see this one, but I brought up this Nape Caliber Cove because here's an example of finding things that kind of match, like the red in this, picks up on the red here. And then I would just put it in the color of punch, kind of have a punch here, brightish.
It depends. It depends on the winter. It depends on where it's planted. Because you have microclimates within your garden, and if you get it in a nice little sheltered area where it doesn't freeze, it'll go fine. It's just keeping it cut back and fertilized.
That one. This would be fun paired up with something.
Oh, that's pretty.
There's the fun of color.
Yeah.
Combining colors.
And that's really interesting because it does change it to a fall color. And if you put that chrysanthemum with it, then it tones it all down from being a real vibrant, bring that one in. And then the other one is the rusty, there's that one that's rusty. Lardia? It has that real rusty brown tone, so you can even put that and it would subdue this and bring in that other. And even a snapdragon like that. These are so pretty, these coral showers. It's too fancy. So, what else are we going to talk about?
Does anybody has any questions?
I have a comment for a shower.
Succulents are
That's
more annuals.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to plant shallow bowls of animals to survive for any length of time.
That's actually the first question I asked. How big is your pot? Where is it going to be sitting? So that's my question. So I love a cook my herbs, and my basil always dies in the first of the fall. So I want to put one inside this year.
Inside
Well,
your house?
in the pot, but I could bring it inside for freeze. I don't know if it's going to come.
It'll depend on how much light it gets.
Yeah.
If it gets a lot of bright light, it might. I can't promise because I really don't know the amount of light yet, but it would have a much better chance inside on a bright window than it would be outdoors.
I wonder if I just put it on the patio where it's
Protected. Yeah, protected. That's when we sell the hibiscus, like